Good day, and thank you very much for seeking the ACT Party's view on a series of questions from the Retirement Villages Residents Association. Let me start by saying retirement villages as a sector have performed some very important tasks for New Zealand. They have provided more accommodation and more places for New Zealanders to live than nearly any other sector of the economy over the last several decades. And it hasn't just benefited those who live in retirement villages. They've actually created new housing space for all of New Zealand. As people move on from their traditional homes to villages, that has been good for subsequent generations. In order for that to happen, the sector requires certainty and confidence and a source of revenue so that it can keep building. This should be seen as a win-win. The questions that have been asked are predominantly about should there be a review? Well, absolutely. There should always be questions about whether or not any government's policy or any parliament's laws are fit for purpose at the present time. There's been questions about whether the interest-free student loan should be paid back immediately. Absolutely, if that's what the contract specifies. There are questions about whether or not contracts should be written in plain language. Well, yes, that's a goal that everybody desires. However, it's not simple for the government to say that contracts should be written in plainer language. It's really a question for your lawyer and the legal advice that you seek when you buy into a very significant contract. Just as when you purchase a home, the sale and purchase agreement is something that you'd want to get good advice. It's a big decision that you are making. Altogether, in our view, it's important that the government looks at the rules that are in place and asks if there can be improvement. But it's very important, and any honest politician dealing with this matter will have to concede that ultimately the retirement village sector has been good for New Zealand, good for the residents, and good for the people involved in providing it. Once we see it as a win-win, the question is how best to ensure that this sector continues growing, continues doing well, and continues accommodating more New Zealanders. That is going to require certainty, it's going to require confidence, and it's going to require the right legal advice for people entering and exiting the sector, as well as a sector that is committed to making sure it does the best by all people. The ACT Party stands by those goals. We understand the sector, we understand its contribution, we understand the needs of the people who are resident in retirement villages. We also understand what is required by business and what is required by the community for prosperity to continue growing. And that's not wild promises by politicians that they'll rip up contracts and rewrite them or try and make things fairer than they are. It is a commitment to people being able to make a deal and keep a deal in plain language, well understood, with proper legal advice. That is the way forward. I know that it's not a topic we've been specifically asked about, but I also make the point that this election is one that will be more important than others in recent 3-year cycles. There are big questions for New Zealand about economic management, how life can be made affordable while prices rise, affecting particularly those on fixed incomes. There are questions about how the streets can be safe. I've personally assisted village managers where people are coming into the property and brazenly stealing from within village residences. In that particular case, we were able to move on some local neighbours after a while. These questions of whether or not life can be affordable again and the streets safe and even people safe in their place of residence are critical to New Zealand. But there's also the question of how we make the Treaty of Waitangi make sense in 2023 as something that unites us as New Zealanders and as humans rather than divides us according to race. And that is a question that is particularly salient in healthcare. We can't do better healthcare when we're constantly focused on dividing patients according to their ancestry rather than their medical need. It's also salient in education. The next generation won't be able to manage New Zealand if they don't have the skills and the academic knowledge taught to them in order to solve problems and face our challenges. I hope my answers in relation to the Retirement Villages Association's specific questions are helpful. I hope it's clear that we respect the needs of residents, but also the certainty and the confidence required by investors to make the sector keep growing and continue its contribution to New Zealand. That is a reality where good legal advice and proper understanding and plain language all go together, but it is unfair for some politicians to make populist promises that they're going to rip up how the sector actually operates. And when it comes to the country of New Zealand and the future that current generations will enjoy in years to come and future generations will enjoy in decades and centuries to come, it is absolutely critical that we have not just a change of government, but a real change in October, and that's why I ask people to give their party vote to act.